Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. You're going to get married, and the first thing that you need to do, of course, after planning and deciding about marriage is spouse selection. And you look at what your religion says and you listen to what other people have to say as well, and there's a truckload of information that you receive. You don't know whose advice to accept. You don't know what to listen to, whether it be your uncle, whether it be some random book that you've picked up, whether it be a television program, whether it be the local scholar that's giving you information. I do believe it is very, very confusing. You don't know what your parents are trying to tell you in finding a spouse and the choices that they might have. Probably they're imposing some things on you. Probably they're telling you some things or giving you probably some conditions that you might not be very comfortable with, as far as the nationality or what kind of age range they should be in, or what occupation, anything else that probably we use to see in our society. So it is indeed something very, very difficult, and you only need to experience that whole process of spouse selection for you to understand that. What does Islam say about all of this? I can say with confidence that if we were to look at the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, from the Prophet all the way down to the last of our Imams, peace be upon them all, we can see that marriage is a very simple, basic, straightforward procedure that is similar to any other routine that existed. Of course, it does have its own significance. There are many recommendations around marriage, but it's not something that you have to close out the whole village in. It's not something that you have to be preparing for the next 6 months of your life. It's not something that you have to go out and get a mortgage for and borrow so much money so you fall into debt. That's not what Islam tells us as far as what spouse selection is. And it's not about what their occupation is. It's not about how much their income is. It has nothing to do with the thickness of their wallets or the looks that they might have. And therefore, we really need to go back to the fundamentals. When it comes to something like spouse selections, we need to go back to the fundamentals. But let's say, for argument's sake, that you've made that choice and that you're married, and now there are some problems in your life. What is the first and foremost thing that we need to do? We need to be content with our choice. We can't always mentally rewind the tape and say, I could have done this. We can't look back at the past and feel that we were able to probably accomplish something better, or made a certain choice here, or changed something there. Because that's really going to feed into that emotional side of ours and probably bring about some problems. When we look at something like spouse selection, and we know that this is the procedure for spouse selection, after the process of who it is that you've chosen and you are now married, and that household is there, the foundation is there. Why do you want to wreck it? Why do you want to ruin it? Keep it, save it, build on top of it. Yes, you probably have to renovate something here, you'll probably have to do a little bit of painting somewhere there, but no one gets into marriage wanting to have all of these problems. No civil engineer is going to plan a large construction and go off and use low-grade material. You want to build something, you are going to be using the best of material that you have. Here, in our case, when it comes to something like a spousal relationship, you are going to be using the best of your skills to keep that relationship intact and alive. So when you are looking and anticipating towards the future, you're going to make sure that you don't dwell on the past. And that's why you need to make sure that the people who are surrounding you are giving you the right advice. As I said, a lot of advice is going to come your way when you are choosing a spouse. A lot of advice is going to come your way when you're married, when you're at home. Some people might interfere, some people might want to positively involve themselves, but whose advice do you listen to? This is a very, very important point that we need to take into mind, because advice and what you listen to and what you read and what you hear could either save your marriage or could either destroy your marriage. The same way as correct spouse selection could either sustain that relationship or it could probably lead you to a dead end either very, very quickly or probably later on in the time. And of course, unfortunately, there's going to be victims here probably after you've having some children, and there's going to be some problems. So with the detailed information we have about spouse selection, we need to make sure that we are able to distinguish between the right advice and the wrong advice. Information given to us in a correct way that would help me and assist me not only as a human being in a relationship, but also as a Muslim individual. And at the same time, I need to make sure that I stay away from wrong culture. I stay away from un-Islamic practices. I stay away from that westernized, global westernized influence that might be coming my way. If I was to do this, I will be extremely successful in my relationship. But at the same time, I know that dwelling on the past is also going to get me into trouble. As I just mentioned, we need to make sure that the people around us are giving us the right advice. What's an example of wrong advice that's really going to get me nowhere? It's really going to distance my heart away from my spouse. One of my friends comes to know about me having a problem with my spouse. And the first thing that they say, instead of trying to resolve the problem, or maybe kind of cover up some of the issues and say something positive to get me back to reconciling with my spouse, they would probably say, yeah, it was the wrong choice in the beginning. Or we hear this a lot, you could have done better anyway. Or things like that that are very damaging, that are really wrong. Someone might say it innocently. You're probably very upset and you're letting out your emotions and you're crying and you're shouting and you're screaming, and you have a friend who is seeing that distraught person in you and then wants to come along and say something for the sake of calming you down. But in reality, they're not. So instead of them saying something like, go back home or be patient, they're saying, you know what? You could have done better instead of them. Or maybe the spouse, the husband might say it to the wife, or the wife might say it to the husband, you know, I would have chosen someone else better than you. Or I used to get 10 proposals a week. I don't know why I chose you. Or 1,000 marriages away from you, I would be a lot more happy. all of these other very hurtful things that someone might say to their spouse that is in fact very, very damaging. And of course it's from shaitan. Shaitan is telling you, say these kind of things where you're happy and you're content in the relationship, and then shaitan wants to ignite that fuel of discontent in your heart by saying you could have done better, by saying why did you make that choice, by saying something along the lines of where is it that you're going to, for example, solve any of these problems that you might have, or the least that could bring about that negativity in your mind towards your spouse is, did you make the right selection? Did you make the right choice? But you're married now. Be happy. Be content. Try to avoid those altercations that you might have. Try to understand the skills of keeping that healthiness in the relationship. Those individuals who do give you that kind of damaging advice, keep them away from you, because they're not doing anything positive to you. They're not doing anything productive for your relationship. You want to save your marriage? Be positive. Don't dwell on the past. Think for yourself and for the future. Because when these thoughts come to your mind, like, I could have done better, if only I chose the other person that I proposed to or that proposed to me, I was forced into this marriage, I didn't have a choice, or all of these other very common, unfortunately, common sentences that usually come up in a fight or after a fight, or maybe even when someone is calm, or maybe something like this being said by a so-called friend is in fact not going to do anything good for you. So what do we do when we feel this way? We understand that as human beings, we will never be able to be perfect ourselves. We need to look at ourselves. We need to see how we are in the relationship, how I am contributing to something that is either good or probably something that is bad, and evaluate myself regularly. If I'm to do that, then of course the other person will feel that demand of wanting to keep up with how it is that I am feeling towards him or towards her. If you were to keep that as a fundamental tool in salvaging your relationship, in saving your marriage, you will certainly be successful. Don't ponder on the past. Don't allow negative individuals to influence your decisions, and always make sure that you are content with what it is that you have. Being content, being satisfied, knowing that you are able to do better in yourself, with your spouse, not without your spouse, then you will be able to carry on and sustain the relationship. Now, of course, things are going to occur and issues are going to happen, but that's the process. That's the nature of life. That's how we are in what it is that we live with. So, could you have done better? Maybe yes, maybe no. You don't know if you married that particular individual that you're probably thinking about how your relationship would be. You don't know how you were then and how you are now. And that's how it is with every person. We don't know how we're going to be in a few more years. For us to determine how we are based on how we were is, of course, something very far from reality. So be content and always make sure that you are vigilant in making sure that these thoughts, when they do cross your mind, you straight away get rid of them and you know that they are from shaitan. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi tahirin.